So over the years, I've had the occasional YouTube comment or stream comment that says something like, "Oh, I'm losing campaigns on normal difficulty. What am I doing wrong? Ah." And I sometimes try to reach out to people to ask, "Hey, can you record yourself playing? Let me see what you're doing and I can maybe tell you what you're doing wrong." But it's never gone through and I've never been able to until now. A young man by the name of Remzy joined my Discord and said he was having some troubles with the game, and we tried to help him out, and I thought, oh, let's see if he wants to record. I asked him, and he said yes. So today, we're going to go through his footage, and I'll mention everything that I think is a bit of a mistake and what he should have done instead, with the idea being that if you're also a newer player who struggles with the game, well, maybe you'll learn something here about what you might be doing wrong, and well, hopefully a bunch of people can get better off the back of this. So thanks to Remzy for taking the time to send me the footage and for being willing to even do it. I think a lot of people wouldn't want thousands of people to see them sucking at a game, so they just not even do something like this. So thanks to him for having the ballsies to do this. He's got a good attitude towards learning, so let's begin. So first of all, he's chosen to play the High Elves, and I should mention a couple of things first of all, actually. Number one, he plays on an ultra-wide monitor, which means he recorded that way, and I'm only playing on 16:9, and you're probably only watching this on 16:9 ratio. So we either have to watch the footage like this, or like this. Just a bit zoomed in, cuts off the UI. I think it's better though, so we're going to watch it like this. He's also using a UI mod, so if it looks a bit different, that's why. So the first mistake should be pretty obvious to most of you here, and that's that he's chosen to play elves. Blech. I couldn't even finish that line. In all seriousness, this campaign is actually a good, user-friendly, noob-friendly campaign, so it is a good one to learn the game with. But he does show his settings, and it shows that he's playing on normal campaign difficulty, which is fine, but he's playing on easy battle difficulty. And I'd say anyone would be better off playing on normal, because easy is just kind of a bit unrealistic, like it changes the unit stats a lot, so you don't really get a good sense of matchups so well, because everything's kind of easy. So I think even if you're the noobest of the noob, play on normal, you'll be fine. You might get a bit of an ass kicking, but you'll learn and you'll get better and you'll be fine. So, Tyrion campaign, we're starting off on the isolated island of Ulthuan, so it's nice and easy, lots of friendly high elf factions around. Gonna whack his hero and his army and then get on with his first battle. And here he's going to make his first mistake as he's going to auto-resolve it. He's not going to fight it. Now, this is a very easy battle. You have a pretty good starting army here. You've got a Phoenix, you've got some Silver Helms, and of course Tyrion himself. And the enemy, well, they don't really have a lot. So it's a really easy battle. And when you're new to the game and you don't know anything, these are great learning opportunities. So to simply auto-resolve past them is a bit of a waste. And he's going to do that a lot throughout this campaign. But it's good to just practice trying to predict things. Can this unit beat this unit? Well, I'm going to put it against it and see what happens. And then, hey, you've learned something and you can use that going forward. He's then going to roll on to take his first settlement of the enemy, and once again he's going to auto-resolve through it. Another missed opportunity for some valuable learning there. He's also going to loot and occupy, but more on that later. One thing Remzy is pretty good at staying on top of, though, is his diplomacy. He's getting trade agreements nice and early. I often forget to look at diplomacy at the start of a campaign, to be honest, so he's doing well with that. And when it comes to buildings, he's doing what I think a lot of new players do, is that they just go heavy on the military buildings, because they're the fun ones, right? They're the ones that give you the units to play with, although to auto-resolve with, apparently. Now, of course, you want some military buildings to be able to get some units, but you also want growth buildings to advance the province, and also income buildings to have money to afford stuff. Although on this difficulty, you kind of get quite a bit of money, so it's not as much of an issue. The other mistake here is that he's put some tier 3 buildings in his tier 5 capital settlement. So that big settlement, Lothern, that one goes up to tier 5, and buildings in it can go up to tier 5, whereas the other 3, they're only small settlements, so they only go up to tier 3 and can never have tier 4 or 5 buildings. So generally what you want to do is put buildings that only go up to tier 3 in those little minor settlements, and anything that goes up to tier 5, put it in the capital. Otherwise, what you might find is that when you get to the last slots of the capital, you're going to find you want to put some tier 5 buildings in there, but you got no room. Now, over the turn, he's got an army that's big enough to move on and take the next settlement, Angeriel, over here. There's an army there, there's a garrison, 36 though. He could beat that easily if he wants to, but he's instead going to sit here and recruit. Maybe he's not confident in that fight and he wants more units, but what you have to be careful of is letting the enemy build up their army. You can see the little recruit symbol above their army means they're recruiting units, and the AI can usually recruit more units than you, so they can build an army faster. Maybe more so on higher difficulties. But yeah, generally if the enemy's got a smaller army and you've got a bigger one, you should try and pounce on them before they can build up their force. But eventually he's going to get himself a full stack and then push on this settlement. Easy, decisive victory for him. Another battle he could have fought. This one would have been a little bit harder because it was bigger in size. But hey, there's always the rematch button at the end of a battle, and if you really fuck it up, you can always reload, right? Now, with skill points, this is one place that Remzy is most definitely unsure of what he's supposed to be doing. He puts a lot of his skill points here, first of all, into the blue line and bonded service. Bonded service reduces the cost of recruitment, which might be handy if you're recruiting units a lot, but he's actually just recruited himself a full stack, so putting skill points in this now is almost a bit pointless. Where he should be putting the points is in that red line to buff up his army, namely the spearmen that he has a lot of, and the archers as well, and of course Tyrion himself in that yellow line. Beef Tyrion up, he's an absolute monster. And also something like bonded service, it's only useful when you use it, so if you recruit a unit every 10 turns, well then it's useful once every 10 turns, and it saves you a little bit of money, but it's not going to be as useful as something that's active and doing stuff for you all the time. Now back to the world of construction, and Remzy's trying to decide what to build. For this slot, he goes for a growth building, that's a good choice, but then he demolishes his one income building, which is a curious decision, to say the least. Income buildings are probably the one type of building that you'll never want to demolish because they give you money, and money is what the game is really all about. So you can't have too many of them. As a rough guideline, if you're new and you're not sure what to build, kind of go for a balanced approach. Build a couple of military buildings, a couple of growth buildings, a couple of income buildings, and you're probably fine. Now at this point he's pushed to take the Shrine of Azurian, the last settlement in his province. So he's got his first province completed, which is always the first goal in any campaign pretty much. He's going to put some items on Tyrion, which is good. Again, another thing I often forget to do, so well done for being better than me. And of course he's going to hammer more skill points into that fucking blue line he loves. He fucking loves it. Yes! He's also started building outposts with friendly factions, which it's fine, but I'd say it's probably not really worth it at this point in the campaign, and especially as you're doing it with high elf factions who have all the same units you do for the most part. Although Avalon, as you can see, they do have the Dryad unit, so they do have a few different tree units, and if you want them, then the outpost is going to be worth it, but if you're not actually going to recruit them, as he's not going to, then it's probably a bit of a waste of money. Now, at this point, he's going to do a little more diplomacy with Avalon, this time joining their war against the little Dark Elf faction up top, the Scourge of Cain. Now, this would be a genius move, because he's going to balance it. He's going to get 600 payment for joining the war. This would be a genius move now if he just actually didn't go and bother with the war. And then essentially, he's just milked Avalon for 600. And really, he doesn't need to join in this war, because anybody that's played this campaign enough times knows that faction is going to get wiped out by somebody, so you don't really need to touch it. But of course, he doesn't know that. He's a new player, and he is going to go up there in a bit. Now, another skill point issue, he looks at Roiling Skies here, and he thinks about it, and he doesn't take it at all in this footage that he gave me, and I think he's missing out here, and these lore passives are often very powerful, and for one skill point, it's usually worth it. This one is a little bit less exciting, but basically, every time you cast a spell, this is going to pop. So it's kind of casting like a secondary spell, minus 20 melee defense and speed, but only to flying units, which means it's only useful sometimes if the enemy has flying units, but still knocking 20 melee defense off a flying unit is going to be very helpful for taking them out. More building fun again. This time he's realized he's got two of the same building in the military building that goes up to tier 3. He should have left the one that he's told to demolish in the tier 3 settlement in the Shrine of Azurian and got rid of the one in Lothern, even though it's tier 2, because like I mentioned earlier, that's a tier 3 building in a tier 5 settlement, and generally the only building you probably want to do that with is maybe an income building if it's not a unique building. But the time has come now for Remzy to show us what he can do in battle as his quest battle arrives, and he's going to go for it. He can't auto-resolve his way through this one. Let's see what he can do. So coming into this battle, Remzy's got a pretty standard high elf early game build. Lots of spearmen as a front line, a bunch of archers, a few cav and such. And that's fine, but you really have to understand how it works. Having a front line of spearmen generally isn't going to be great against infantry unless they're buffed up with extra melee attack, which of course we know there's no skill points in the red line, so they're probably a bit lacking when it comes to fighting infantry. They're not going to have a ton of damage output, so it's up to all the other parts of the army to do that. They get extra melee attack when they're fighting large, which is why they're better against large, and if you want to make them okay at fighting infantry, you've got to find ways to buff up their melee attack. Now this cavalry unit on the left is one that he seems to be desperately trying to avoid, even though he could absolutely smash it. It's only Dark Riders, a very low tier, easy cav to deal with. He's got some Silver Helms and Illyrian Reavers. He could get that cav out of the battle right now, but instead he's desperately trying to avoid it. I think maybe he thinks it's stronger than it is. I guess that's just not knowing your units as a new player, right? Another couple of things we can notice here with the missile units, he's currently got them all firing at the enemy lord. This is generally bad on such a small target because you're going to miss a lot. You're going to waste a lot of your ammo. Yes, the the enemy lord is an important target to get rid of, but you've got Tyrion on the goddamn field who stood there doing absolutely nothing at the moment, so a little misuse of missiles there. They're also very close together, which is very dangerous. You'll see why in a minute. He is going to pause the game to start dropping his magic, which is fine, I guess, as a new player. Pausing's okay, slowing down is okay while you're learning. I'd say as you start to get better, though, try to stop doing that. It's only going to make you better to think faster. And he does do a nice little spell combo here, although I think it was probably more luck than judgment, but maybe not. He can tell us otherwise. He drops Curse of the Midnight Wind on a bunch of units, which reduces their armor by 30, and he's then going to hit them with a Wind Blast spell, which does 0 armor-piercing damage, so it's not very good against armor, right? Well, he's just taken their armor off with that previous spell, so he's going to do some extra damage with this Wind Blast. A nice little combo, as I say. Probably an accident, but if he did do it on purpose, what a genius. And here we're about to see why you need to spread your missile units out, because this one unit of cavalry is now going to stop 2 units of missiles from firing, whereas if they were spread out, they'd only stop 1, and then the other missiles could shoot that enemy to save their missile friend. So missile units can work to protect each other. And also, the cavalry that is messing him up is that cavalry that he ignored earlier, which if he'd just taken it out, this wouldn't be a problem. He is going to hit some hammer and anvil here, though, on the front line, so that's nice. He's got a little tactical play there. So nice work on that. Maybe that was why he didn't want to fight the cavalry earlier, because he was worried it was going to mess up his cav, and he wouldn't be able to pull off the hammer and anvil. But the second Dark Elf army is starting to approach now. It's got Malekith on a dragon in it, as well as some other flyers. And those could be pretty dangerous to those bunched up missile units, so he's got to hope that they don't dive all over them. Yeah, so that's what happened. You know what would be useful right now? Minus 20 melee defense for all these flying units. In all seriousness, that would actually be really helpful, especially with Malekith. He's a flying unit, so 20 melee defense would come off him every time you cast a spell, and it lasts for like 25 seconds, so always take your lore passives, people. They are more useful than you think. I'm talking about Roiling Skies that I talked about earlier, by the way, in case you didn't get that. But he's dealt with that first army okay. The second one is coming, though, and it's much more dangerous. It's got a lot of Dark Elves. Yeah, it's got a lot of Dark Elves. The Dark Elf army has got a lot of Dark Elves. Who would have fucking thought, eh? Witch Elves is what I meant to say. It's got a lot of Witch Elves. It's got some Black Ark Corsairs. These are much more dangerous, and the Spearmen are going to struggle with them. Over here on the left, his Illyrian Reavers are being chased by Cold Ones, who will indeed absolutely mess them up. He's trying to get away, even though they're right on top of him. He can't really outrun them. I think maybe he wants to get after the missile units with this cavalry, but those Cold Ones aren't having any of it. And they are going to munch his cav down while they're running away. They're not going to do any damage back, so he's going to be better off either just standing there and fighting or running back through his Spearmen. And if you're going to try and outrun a unit, you need to be much faster than them. Otherwise, this kind of thing happens and you just end up losing a unit. But perhaps, again, this is just a unit knowledge thing, not really knowing too much about Cold Ones, perhaps, and how dangerous they are. And finally now, he's just given Tyrion an order to get into combat, and it's about time. Tyrion is a very strong lord at taking down infantry, at taking down other lords and heroes, at least when you put some skill points into him and buff him up. But he could still be useful as is. He should be going after Malekith. If anything, he does need to be a bit careful, though, because Malekith on a dragon is pretty dangerous. But one thing he needs to be doing now is really focusing on Malekith. If he can get all of his missiles firing at Malekith, who's a big target, that's much better for his missiles to not waste ammo. Get Tyrion on him if you can. Get some other support with all the anti-large units. Finally, they have a target that they're built for, other than Dark Riders, I guess. But ultimately, he is going to get the win here just about. He's going to scrape by. He does get the reinforcements, the AI reinforcements there helping him out. He also has that Phoenix, which he hasn't used much yet. He does have it into combat now, but for the first part of the battle, it didn't do a lot. He also has bombs on the Phoenix. He has like 10 bombs, which could do quite a bit of damage if he used them, but I'm going to guess maybe he just didn't know about that, because those could really mess up the Witch Elves and the Black Ark Corsairs. He just dropped a really nice Thunderbolt spell on some Witch Elves. That was a good target to choose, and he's going to hit them again with another spell. He is good at remembering to use his magic. That's half the battle, and he's using it pretty well too. I think most of Remzy's failing here came from not realizing that his Spearmen really aren't doing much damage, and that his Archers and Cavalry and Phoenix and Lord are the real damage dealers of this army, and so they need to do the damage. The missiles didn't really get to do too much damage. Tyrion hasn't done a great deal. The Phoenix hasn't done a great deal, maybe. His Cav has done a bit of work, but mostly he's scraped by maybe on the easier difficulty setting, and this little bit of extra help he's getting from the AI reinforcement. And if you're interested in supporting the channel, I do have a members-only video of me fighting this battle exactly the same way, except I'm going to do it on very hard, and I'll attempt to put into action everything I'm talking about and show you what I would do with this very army in this very battle. You see, for 2025, I'm trying not to do sponsored ads, you know, those ones that pop up in the middle of the videos that say, hey, this video is sponsored by Trojan Condoms. I'm trying not to do those, even though this is kind of turning into one. So I'm losing out on a lot of money not doing those, and I'm trying to make it up in memberships and try to get that more organic form of support. So if that interests you, do check out the members section. So our man got this one in the bag. He got Tyrion's armor to beef him up a bit. But about now is where he's going to start sailing off north to get after the Scourge of Cain faction, which is a pretty dangerous decision at this point because he's still got some potential enemies nearby. Looking at the little bit of map he just pulled up, we can see that the Vampire Coast, the Dread Fleet, are right there, bordering him, and are a big potential threat. There's also some greenskins on the other side of him, and again, playing this campaign from experience, we know that these greenskins will probably leave you alone, they probably won't bother you, but the Vampire Coast, the Dread Fleet, they most likely will come after you at some point. So currently, his home territory is very vulnerable as he's sailing away, and as a very loose rule of thumb, if you're playing as a kind of good guy faction, it's more likely that bad guy kind of factions are going to come after you, and vice versa, although not always. Sometimes a good guy faction will go after a good guy faction, but very often you've got to look at proximity. Who's the closest to your territory, and who's the biggest potential threat, and should you maybe try to get rid of them before they come after you? So in this case, you'd look at the Dread Fleet here right next to you and you go, right, they've got to go, they might come after me. That should be who you're going for next, rather than the Scourge of Cain up north. Now, he's got some more skill points again, and guess where they're going? It's the blue line. He fucking still loves it. And I did ask Remzy about this. I was like, why are you putting all your skill points into the blue line? Why, like, has somebody told you to do this? Where have you learned this? He said he thought that the blue line would give his army buffs and make his army stronger because he felt like his units weren't really performing. But as we mentioned earlier, it's the red line that's going to buff your army, and it's the red line is, if you're not putting points in there, that's the reason why your army is underperforming. So by all means, there's some great stuff in the blue line, but red line is really where you're going to make your army stronger. A little more building here. He's going to put another growth building in, which is fine, but this is the slot that did have the income building in, which never should have left that slot. But being on normal difficulty here, you do get a good bit of money, so money isn't really a problem for him at the moment, so it's not a huge deal. And we see here, he's going to get himself into another war, siding with Avalon against Slanesh, which is fine, but more on that later. So he sailed his main army up north, he comes ashore, and eventually heads towards the Phoenix Gate, currently occupied by those dirty Scourge of Cain folk. And he's going to auto-resolve through this one, and then he's going to go for, guess what, the good old Loot and Occupy again. But let's take a look at Loot and Occupy for a second, because he's done Loot and Occupy for every single settlement he's taken. Now, you are going to affect your public order quite negatively when you do this. On this difficulty, it's fine, you can get away with it, you can recover it. You're also going to get a nice bit of replenishment, but again, you're going to end this turn in a settlement, so you'll get a nice bit anyway. But the reason I assume Remzy is choosing this option every time is because he sees money on this Occupy option. You can do Occupy and get no money, or you can do Occupy and get money. Sounds like a no-brainer, right? Well, look at how much money he's going to make from this loot. 540. Better than nothing, right? Well, when you loot and occupy a settlement, you are going to damage the buildings, and they will need to be repaired, and how much does that cost in this case? 648, so more than he made. Looting this settlement has actually cost him money, rather than what I assume he thought he was doing was gaining money from the loot and occupy. So be careful with this, check the amount that you're actually looting for is worth it, and is going to be significantly more than the repairs are going to cost you, unless maybe you really need that replenishment. It's just simply not worth it. Now, back in his home province, he's recruited a new lord, Alistair the White Lion, and he's getting himself a second army. Of course, it's full of spearmen, but at least he's going to have a force back here in his home to defend if needed. He's going to push Tyrion on to more Scourge of Cain settlements. Tor and Lek he's going for here. A siege opportunity. This is another easy battle he could win if he fought it. A good opportunity to learn sieges and how to fight those. But again, auto-resolve, loot and occupy again as well. Only made about $1,000 from the loot, so it's probably going to cost him that to repair the place. He then gets an offer from Avalon to join the war against the Dread Fleet, that faction that border his home province. Now, because he is building that second army back there, it's kind of okay if he does this, but I think he would be better off not taking this just yet, finishing up the wars he has in the north, and then bringing his main army back down, and then with his 2 full stacks, he can just absolutely blitz through the Vampire Coast here. But we can see he's thinking about it, he's not sure whether he should do it or not, he's having a good old think. And this will be the 3rd war that he gets himself into if he does it, and they've all been optional wars. He doesn't have to do any of them, no one's declared war on him. He is going to go for it, so now he's in 3 wars. I'd say getting in this many wars isn't a great idea. If you can just get in one, finish off that enemy, and then get in another, that's better than trying to take on multiple factions at the same time. More so on higher difficulties, of course, but the enemy might come at you with more armies than you can handle. He's only got 2 armies at the moment. He's got 2 different sections of territory, one up north, one down south. That's going to be harder to defend than if you just had 1 bit of territory and just expanded that. But by all means, it's not incredibly wrong to take 2 bits of territory and then maybe try to connect them later or something, but it is going to be a bit harder to defend. And he's pushing on the Shrine of Cain here. Another good battle he could have fought to learn some stuff from. Another loot and occupy. That time it was a bit more worth it at 2,500. And another little skill point blunder here. He's going to put a point into dedicated to Assyrian, which is going to buff up Phoenix Guard mostly, but he doesn't have any Phoenix Guard yet. And I don't think he realizes that he's locked out of these other choices. In fairness though, I think he realizes this later and he does reset his skill points to get rid of that point. But yeah, do pay attention to the units that are affected by skill points. If you don't have those units, there's probably not much point taking the skill point yet. Over the turn, Rebellion. Who would have thought? All that looting and occupying has come back to bite him. This is the risk of the public order effects on looting and occupying. If you are going to do it, you do need to be aware of it and build some control buildings or get the control commandment. Otherwise, it might cause you some serious problems. But he's doing okay up here. He just took the Shrine of Kurnus, beat away a big army there. Seducers don't have much left. He's moving on another one of their settlements now. Back down south, though, he's got a big Vampire Coast army coming for him, and he's currently sat in Lothorn. And this army actually is threatening two settlements, both Lothorn and the Tower of Lysine. What he needs to do here is move his main army over to the Tower of Lysine, because that can't defend itself. It's only got a small garrison. Lothorn, I think, is tier 4 at this point. It's got a 20 garrison. It's huge. It can defend itself very well as a city, and that Vampire Coast army will have no chance of taking it. So just be aware of the size of your settlement's garrisons. If they can defend themselves, you may not need to put an army in there, but if they can't defend themselves like so, and you leave them undefended, the AI will most likely go after them. So he's going to get a settlement sacked there. Not a big deal though, they didn't take it, they just sacked it. It's fine. He's not happy about it though. He's going to come back on them with a vengeance. He spots two armies. One of them's in force march. They're both about half stacked, so he's going to go for it. He's going to dive in, see what he can do, and he can do just fine. He can get a close victory from the auto-resolve. So he beats them up and then heads back into his own territory to replenish. A good move. You don't want to stay stood there, taking the attrition. But over the turn, oh scheisse, he gets attacked by another army. This time it actually has Noctilus himself in it. This battle, even though his army is mostly spearmen, it looks like he could possibly win this, and again would be a good practice battle, albeit on the tougher side, but he's just going to go for the auto, and eventually he's going to push on Vol's Anvil and try to take it, but I think he's a bit confused as to why he can't auto-resolve or fight this now. He knows he's got to build siege equipment, but I don't think he knows why he can't just do it now. So he falls back from this, goes and takes out a little nearby army, and then comes back again. And he does this a couple of times, and it's evident, I think, that he doesn't quite know why he can't do the auto-resolve or fight. It's because he doesn't have a siege attacker in his army. You need a unit that has the siege attacker trait, or artillery, I think, can do the same job. But also your legendary lord, whichever legendary lord it is, they get the siege attacker trait. So any army with a legendary lord leading it will be able to instantly attack siege settlements. But if it's anything other than a legendary lord, like Alistair the White Lion, you won't be able to attack straight away, and you will need to build siege equipment if you don't have a unit with the siege attacker trait, which is typically monsters or monstrous infantry. But like I said, artillery can also do the job, but it'll get this settlement on the next turn anyway. Now back up north, we've got some settlements that haven't been fixed up yet. In Tor Akar and Elysia, you can see we've got 4 damaged buildings, and he's got 12 grand in the bank, so he could easily do it, but instead he's going to spend his money on upgrading the Shrine of Cain building and one of his military buildings, and now he doesn't have enough money for all the repairs. So priorities here, repairing those buildings is going to be more important, because until you do, they're not going to generate you any money, and also you're not really in desperate need of the Sword of Cain and upgrading that Shrine of Cain building or the military building. So think about what you need rather than what you want so much. Don't waste your money where you don't really need to spend it. Which is also some good free advice for real life. You're welcome. And this is also the other reason you repair buildings as quickly as possible, because rebellion happens. The public order goes to shit and stays going to shit. So if you're looting and occupying everything, you're screwing the public order or control. And if you don't repair stuff, you're still screwing the public order and control. And that's going to lead you into this situation. Lucky for him, it's an easy kill. Another battle he could fight and learn something from, though. And it's only going to get worse for him, as the Beastmen have now declared war on him, stood next to the Shrine of Cain. They're going to go ahead and raze that shit to the ground. But they're kind of teaching him a lesson here, because he's going to get his 6 grand back from upgrading that building. So it's like they're trying to say, hey, put your money elsewhere first, eh? Now, the thing about this army is it's now seemingly disappeared. More often than not, that's too good to be true. It hasn't just disappeared. It can't have just evaporated. It's still there somewhere. It's just going to be hidden in ambush. So you've got to be careful of hidden armies when you go back over to these kind of places, and he's just going to charge in, and he's going to be fine. He's going to take the settlement back. No worries. Sweet. Over the turn, he goes to leave, and oh, scheisse! There they are, in ambush. They got him. Now luckily, these little random Beastmen armies around, if they're not one of the major Beastmen factions, they're usually little crappy armies of crappy units mostly, and these are just one of one armies. As soon as you destroy those little armies, their faction's gone forever, so don't worry about them coming back on you. If you see these little Beastmen armies, just kill them as soon as you see them, get them out the way, otherwise they come back on you like this, and they're a pain in the ass. Now, we're not going to go through this whole battle because there's not much to it, but what I would do in this situation is make two parallel lines opposite each other so that our units can't be flanked. Because as we see, he's going to make one line here, but what he needs is maybe half of those units facing that way and half of the units facing the other way, so they're kind of protecting each other's back and they can't be flanked. And he's mostly going to do fine here. They're going to come after his spear infantry and leave his missiles alone so they can shoot some stuff, and it's a pretty easy victory. Like I say, these armies usually aren't very tough. So he survives that little ambush and then chases them down to get his revenge, and he's going to remove that faction from existence, and hopefully will have learned not to leave these little Beastmen factions near your settlements, because they will do this annoying shit. Now, one of the last things that happens in his footage is a little bit confusing to me, as he gets this battle opportunity, right? It's basically an opportunity for him to join in a battle of Avalon with 2 stacks going after 1 vampire coast stack. So it's a guaranteed win for them. He doesn't really need to get involved, but he decides to fight this battle. Now, because he's reinforcements, it takes him a while to come in, so he doesn't really get to do anything in this battle other than shoot a few things. But it made me wonder why, of all the battles that he's had the opportunity to fight, and a lot of them to easily win, did he choose to play this one? I guess having the support of the Avalon armies gives him a bit of confidence that no matter what he does, he's not going to fuck it up because they're going to do most of the work. But to me, that just seems like he's not afraid, that's not the right word, but maybe just lacks the confidence in battles to feel like he knows what he's doing enough to win. And well, that's fair enough. Battles in Total War are incredibly complex. There's a lot to learn, a lot to know, and if you don't, it can be very overwhelming, understandably. But now, that's not actually the confusing bit, because what I just said, like, it seems like it makes sense, but then over the turn, the Shadow Legion go to declare war on Ivres, one of his allies, and again he gets himself into another war, which, well, we can't fault him for being a reliable ally, at least, but he's going to get himself into this war, and then he gets instantly attacked by one of Be'lakor, well, it's Be'lakor's army itself, actually, and of all the battles in this campaign that he could have chosen to fight, this one is the one that he is going to choose to actually fight. And look at this army. This is no joke. His army is really not equipped to deal with this one, but this is the battle he's going to choose to fight. Honestly, I don't think I would have even taken this fight. I would have just taken that auto-resolve, just because the enemy has so much infantry killing power, and his army here is mostly infantry. So the spearmen are probably going to get run through by bloodletters and demonettes, and then they're going to spill into all the missiles, and then he won't really be able to do a lot. Now, upon my confusion, I did ask Remzy why he chose to fight this battle. He said he couldn't really remember, but maybe it was just him trying to get in some battle practice. If that's the case, then perhaps Remzy is trying to run before he can walk with battles. He's trying to do these few harder battles. He did the quest battle earlier. That's actually a pretty tough one with an early game army anyway. Whereas, as I've mentioned, throughout this entire campaign, he's been skipping over all the easy battles that he can win, and those, even if they're a guaranteed win, are still going to be good practice. Because if you're not having to try so hard, you can kind of pay attention a little bit more, look at the matchups that are going on, look at your units, are they winning, are they losing, try to figure out why they might be winning or losing. Or you can do things like, if you've got a full stack going up against an enemy half stack, you're pretty much guaranteed to win. So why don't you try using just half of your stack against the enemy half stack, so it's more of an even fight. And if you kind of lose, then well, you still got the other half of your stack to pick up the slack. So yeah, there's many ways to practice and get better at the game, and that really just does mean playing lots of battles, no matter how big or small they might be. And in Remzy's case, obviously he's taking on this battle. He just doesn't know his units and factions yet, so he didn't know this was a bad battle to fight. But as I say, practice is the only way you're going to get to know that. Also learning your units and factions, although that does take a long time. There is thousands of units in this game, so it's going to take a while, but there are some shortcuts you can take to understand units. And while there are thousands of units in the game, a lot of them are very similar, so you can kind of group them up in your head to make them just kind of one group, and then you kind of know how to deal with them. I do have a video on this subject. It's a bit of an old video, Warhammer 2 days, but I'll link it at the end if you want to check it out. But otherwise, there we go. That about does it for this video. Thanks so much to Remzy for taking the time to do this and for sending it across. I've been waiting a long time to do one of these, and I am going to do more of them if you like them. Let me know what you think of this, if you like the idea, if you want me to do more. And if you do, then, well, I'm going to need you, good people. If you kind of suck at the game and you don't really know what you're doing wrong and you want to know, send it to me. All you got to be able to do is record yourself. If you've got an NVIDIA GPU or an AMD GPU made in like the last 10 years, you've probably got software on there that'll allow you to record. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. As long as you can record at 60 FPS on maybe like, I don't know, medium settings at least, then I'll take it. If it's going to be like 30 FPS on low settings, then no thank you. I'll likely open this up to members and patrons first, though, before I give it to everyone else, because I don't want to be inundated with millions of these things, potentially. So keep an eye out in these videos. I might announce when I want to do that, or maybe in a YouTube post. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the future.